Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Ashtotar Shatashi Srimad Divine Grace Esi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Samstapakacharya Jagadguru Seva the whole world Srila Prabhupada Ki Nitai Gaura Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 3, Text number 7. Dvitiyam tu bhavaya asya, Dvitiyam tu bhavaya asya, rasatala gatam mahim, rasatala gatam mahim, uddharishyan upadatta, uddharishyan upadatta, yajñeshaha saukaram vapuhu, yajñesha saukaram vapuhu, dvitiyam tu bhavayasya, rasatalagatam mahim, uddharishyan upadatta, yajñesha saukaram vapuhu. Dvitiyam tu bhavayasya, rasatalagatam mahim, uddharishyan upadatta, yajñesha saukaram vapuhu. Dvitiyam tu bhavayasya, rasatalagatam mahim, uddharishyan upadatta, yajñesha saukaram vapuhu. Dvitiyam, the second, tu, but, bhavaya, for the welfare of, asya, of this earth, rasatala, of the lowest region, gatam, having gone, mahim, the earth, udarishyan, lifting, upadatta, established, yajñeshaha, the proprietor or the supreme enjoyer, saukaram, hoggish, vapuhu, incarnation. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices accepted the incarnation of a boar, the second incarnation, and for the welfare of the earth, he lifted the earth from the nether regions of the universe. Please repeat this translation. The supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices accepted the incarnation of a boar, the second incarnation, and for the welfare of the earth, he lifted the earth from the nether regions of the universe. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The indication is that for each and every incarnation of the personality of Godhead, the particular function executed is also mentioned. There cannot be any incarnation without a particular function, and such functions are always extraordinary. They are impossible for any living being to perform. The incarnation of the boar was to take the earth out of the Pluto's region of filthy matter. Picking up something from the filthy place is done by a boar, and the all-powerful personality of Godhead displayed this wonder to the Asuras who had hidden the earth in such a filthy place. There is nothing impossible for the personality of Godhead, and although he played the part of a boar, by the devotees he is worshipped, staying always in transcendence. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamniti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this verse from Srimad-Bhagavatam. Now we move to the third chapter. Dvitiyam tu bhavayasya rasatalam rasatalagatam mahim uddarishyan upadatta yajnesha saukaram vapuhu. This chapter of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, chapter 3, is titled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And such a title is very exclusive to the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. We find that other sampradayas also, they discuss Srimad-Bhagavatam, but they will definitely not have such a title. Krishna is the source of all incarnations. Whereas in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, particularly by the study of Srimad-Bhagavatam, it is established by the Acharyas that although there are so many incarnations of the Lord, Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And to explain that further, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that every incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has a particular function to perform. So, avatara means he must have a particular function. And without a particular function, no incarnation appears or manifests. So, it's very, very specific that whenever there is an incarnation, he must have a specific function to perform. Only then he is accepted as an incarnation. And such incarnations, such functions are extraordinary. In what way they are extraordinary? They are impossible for any living being to perform. In this way, the incarnation is always very, very special. No human being can ever call himself as an incarnation of the Lord. Not only human being, no person, even of the higher planetary systems, can ever equate himself to the position of the incarnation of the Lord. So because in India especially, it is very common for people to claim that our Swamiji is also an avatara, he is also an incarnation. Because that particular person, he may have done lot of charitable work, lot of welfare activity, which probably governments could not do. So he would have performed that. Or he would have shown some mystic powers which common people are not able to do. So based on these two things, lot of charitable work which has transformed the lives of thousands and thousands of people, or by showing some mystic magical like producing ash out of the picture, or suddenly somebody gets teleported to another place. And these are all the mystic perfections of yoga siddhis. So if somebody is able to do these two things, which common people cannot do, generally such people start claiming themselves of avatara, or even if they don't claim, their followers are very eager to project such a person as incarnation of God. Because they say God ultimately has to come in some manushya rupa. Devam manushya rupaha. We cannot see God, so God has to come in human form. So our Guru or our Swamiji only is incarnation. Like that, so many such theories in our country, they go on. So in order to distinguish the original Supreme Lord and his incarnations from all such bogus incarnations, Srila Prabhupada has very beautifully laid down the criteria that avatara means he does not simply appear like that, he comes with a particular function only. Number one, and such functions are extraordinary to perform. No living being can ever perform such a task. So in this way, one can know who is actually an incarnation and who is not an incarnation. And also from this we understand that Krishna is not an avatara, because avatara means he comes for particularly performing a particular function, whereas Krishna in his original form, he does not come to perform a particular function. He comes to manifest his most wonderful activities or pastimes with his most confidential devotees. He comes to explain or showcase to the whole world that he is the supreme cause of all causes and he is beyond all Vedic rules and regulations. Generally, other avatars, we tend to find that they conform with the Vedic standards, not so as not to confuse the people. Whereas Krishna, we see in his life, he performed so many activities which are totally contradictory or against to establish Vedic principles. For example, Krishna danced with the gopis who were all married to some other men in the dead of the night. So this is totally against established Vedic standards. No respectable person in the Vedic culture would even dream or think of performing such an activity. But Krishna performed them just to showcase. Of course, he has his own reasons for performing such activities, but such activities are displayed in the human society and then later on recorded by Vyasadeva and then for the future people, just to indicate that Krishna is not one amongst us. He is the cause of all causes. He is not bound by any rules and regulations of the Vedic culture. In fact, Shishupala, when he criticizes Krishna in the Rajasuya Yajna, one of the criticisms he puts forward against Krishna is that this Krishna went and lived in the midst of the ocean. In the ocean, generally in the Vedic culture, people are forbidden from crossing the ocean. And no person who is a follower of Vedic culture will go and make a house in the midst of the ocean. Ocean is considered impure. But Krishna went and built his Dwaraka in the midst of the ocean. So that was one of the criticism put forward by Shishupala. And how is that this person, you are honoring him as the head of this assembly, Rajasuya Yajna, where great personalities are there. So many rishis have come. So many tapasvis have come. Bhishma is there. All other great personalities are there. Instead of choosing all these persons, you have chosen this person, Krishna, who doesn't even follow the basic Vedic etiquette that one should not go and live in the midst of the ocean. So how can I accept him as the leader of this assembly? So this was one of the arguments of Shishupala, among many other criticisms he put forward. So like that we see Krishna performed so many activities which do not conform to standard established Vedic practices, just to indicate to the whole world that he is beyond all the rules and regulations of the Vedas. So in that sense, Krishna is not an incarnation. And as far as the Shastric evidence is concerned, Prabhupada quotes that verse in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Ete chamsa kalapumsaha Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. And in another place it is mentioned that Jiva Goswami, one of the principal disciples of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has called this as the crown statement of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. This statement, Jiva Goswami accepts as the crown statement. Crown is the most important statement of the Srimad-Bhagavatam is Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. So based on that, Srila Prabhupada has written all his purports where he has explained the two-handed form of Krishna to be the cause of all causes, the origin of all other incarnations also. Then further in the purport, Prabhupada mentions that the Lord accepted the Varaha incarnation to pick up the earth from the filthy regions, because it is a function of a boar to pick up something from a filthy place. Because the demon Hiranyaksha had hidden the earth planet in the lower regions, Rasatala Mahim, and this wonder was displayed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So just to give an idea as to how wonderful this pastime, this wonderful activity of Lord Varaha, just to give the geographical location of where this is happening, each universe is half filled with water. And half filled with water, and on that half filled water, the Lord lays down as Garbhodaka Sai Vishnu. And then there are the 14 planetary systems. And in the middle is the Bhumandala, the middle planetary system. Above Bhumandala is Bhuvarloka, Suvarloka, Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, up to Satyaloka. And below this Bhumandala is Tala, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Rasatala, 7 lower planetary systems. So Bhumandala is in the middle, and Bhumandala itself is in the form of a large disk. Shri Krishna Balaram. So Bhumandala is in the form of a large disk. And this Bhumandala is divided into 7 concentric islands. And in the middle of Bhumandala is Jambudvipa. And Jambudvipa is divided into 9 Varshas. And one of the Varshas is Bharata Varsha. And in Bharata Varsha, Earth planet is one Bharata Khanda. So we are living in Bharata Khanda. There are 9 Varshas. One of them is Bharata Varsha. And all these 9 Varshas together, put together, is called Jambudvipa. And Jambudvipa is the centermost island. Jambudvipa is surrounded by an ocean of salt water. That is surrounded by Plakshadvipa. Plakshadvipa is again surrounded by another liquid, sugarcane juice or something like that. Then there is another Salmali Dvipa. Like that, there are 7 concentric islands. This whole thing comprises of Bhumandala. And in the mid, in the small, in some corner, we are living as in Bharata Khanda. So the demon Hiranyaksha, he pulled out this earth planet and he pushed it down. Down is Tala, Atala, Sutala, Talatala, Rasatala. Up to Rasatala, he pushed it down. So the Lord, he accepted this wonderful incarnation of Bor just to lift the earth planet from the nether regions, from the lower planetary system, and place it back in its original position. So this is the potential. So you can imagine how great a demon Hiranyaksha must have been to remove the earth planet from its position and then push it down in the Rasatala region is no ordinary activity. So such a powerful demon he was. And to counter this demon's activity, the Lord took the form of Varaha to place the earth planet back in its orbit. So this is where this gives us an idea as to where this whole pastime is happening. And Srila Prabhupada has given a very nice lecture on this verse 137. And there, particularly, Srila Prabhupada points out the difficulty that the modern educated people, particularly the scientists, they have in accepting this cosmological description as given in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Because at least in the last 50-60 years, there's a lot of research happened in the field of cosmology, and through the efforts of the scientists, now scientists know much more about the cosmology than what they knew previously. The Milky Way galaxy and the number of planets are there, and about other galaxies, and scientists are busy sending radar signals to other planets, just hoping to get some information or something from outside this universe. Like that, a lot of activity has gone and a lot of improvement has been made. So therefore, there is a tendency to reject the statements of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, particularly which Bhagavatam talks of the cosmology of the universe as something fictional. So Srila Prabhupada, to counter these arguments, explains in the lecture, he uses Kupamanduka Nyaya. So in the Vedic literature, there is one Nyaya, logic called Kupamanduka. Manduka means frog, Kupa means well. So Kupamanduka Nyaya, Srila Prabhupada uses to explain how the scientists are caught up in the mentality of a frog. So Prabhupada explains that how there was a frog living in a well, and having been born and brought up in the well, the maximum distance the frog could conceive in its mind or imagine any geographical distance was in terms of the well, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times the well. So once it so happened that another frog came in from the ocean and got into this well, and both the frogs had a conversation. And when the second frog mentioned that I come from a place called ocean, so the first frog was very curious to know how big the ocean was. So then the second frog explained that ocean is very, very vast. It is impossible to describe its size. So this first frog started calculating the distance or the capacity of the ocean in terms of the well. Maybe 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 10 times or 100 times the well. Beyond that, the frog could not conceive. So this is one of the standard logics used in the Vedic literature to explain how things which are beyond the capacity, intellectual capacity of a person cannot be brushed aside because we are not able to capture those things with the power of our imagination. So Prabhupada says scientists are caught up in the frog mentality. So therefore, in order to broaden one's perspective, one should not accept one's own knowledge as the ultimate. Because in the Vedic literature, there are three ways in which one acquires knowledge. Traditionally, in the study of philosophy, this is called epistemology. Epistemology means how we gain knowledge. That is one of the study in philosophy. So how does a person gain knowledge? So in the Vedic literature, it is mentioned that there are three ways of gathering knowledge or gathering information. First is called pratyaksha pramana. Pramana means evidence, putting forward evidence that something is there on the basis of pratyaksha, on the basis of what can be seen. And secondly, by anumana pramana. Anumana means I don't see something, but based on some indication, I make a calculated judgment that this must be there. For example, suppose there is a smoke coming from a mountain. So based on the observation that smoke coming from the mountain, one can make a calculated guess that there must be fire in the mountain. I don't see the fire, but I see the smoke. Based on the smoke, I can make a calculated guess that there should be fire in the mountain. This sort of gathering knowledge is called anumana. It's called anumana, as opposed to pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means directly you see something and you believe, oh, here is a fan, so therefore the fan exists. So pratyaksha pramana and anumana pramana. These are the two ways in which knowledge is gathered in the material world. And modern science, whatever advancement of information and knowledge modern science has made is based on either pratyaksha or anumana, either by direct perception or by hypothesis. And both pratyaksha and anumana have their limitations. For example, pratyaksha, I see the sun, but I see the sun like a small 1 rupee coin. But the sun is not the size of a 1 rupee coin. We know, according to modern science itself, it is 14,000 times bigger than the earth. But we do not see the sun as 14,000 times bigger than that. We see it as the size of a 1 rupee coin. So therefore, pratyaksha pramana, or this methodology of gaining knowledge through direct perception, is faulty. And second, anumana, hypothesis. Hypothesis also can go wrong. We do not know whether our judgment is actually perfect or not. We give the example that sometimes a person was passing through one of the hotel room, and then he heard some noises of severe, heavy quarrel between two other persons. Each of them were swearing against each other that I would murder you. So he called the police, and then the police came, they checked the room, they saw that one TV serial was going on and two people were arguing with each other. So this is an example of how anumana can go wrong. Person mistook a film dialogue to be an actual quarrel between two other persons. So anumana also fails. So in the Vedic literature, it is explained that one should not rely on pratyaksha and anumana, especially to gain knowledge about God and soul. These are two things which one can never figure out by pratyaksha and anumana. Knowledge of the soul, because the soul is not visible to our eyes, and knowledge of God, of the Supreme Lord, who is also not visible to our eyes. So the attempt to gain knowledge about the soul and God through pratyaksha and anumana is always going to be a faulty approach. Therefore, in the Vedic literature, Shabda Pramana has been given the maximum, has been accepted as the perfect methodology of gaining knowledge. And Shabda Pramana means hearing from an authoritative source. So by hearing from an authoritative source, we can know things which are beyond our capacity to see, hear, or even judge. And as far as Shabda Pramana is concerned, Prabhupada gives that famous example that if a child has to know the identity of his father, he cannot go around making a research. He has to ask his mother the identity of his father, and the child has to accept whatever the mother says. In fact, all of us have accepted the identity of our father based on what the mother has told us. It's the mother who shows that this person is your father. So there is no other way a person can figure out who is my father other than the authority of the mother. So this is an example of Shabda Pramana, hearing from authoritative source. So Vedic literatures are accepted as Shabda Pramana, and it is through Shabda Pramana that one can know about the cosmology of this universe in detail, as opposed to the approach by modern science, which relies heavily on Pratyaksha and Anumana to figure out things which are not known to us. So this is another important point Srila Prabhupada mentions. And lastly, Srila Prabhupada mentions in the lecture that Bhudevi, she prayed to the Lord for protection, and therefore the Lord, in order to save Bhudevi, he incarnated as Varaha. And similarly, just as the Lord incarnated as Varaha, Srila Prabhupada says the Lord has incarnated in the form of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, in the age of Kali. And therefore, devotees who wish to receive the protection of the Lord must sincerely take shelter of the holy name of the Lord. And in this way, just as Bhudevi was protected by the Lord, the devotees of the Lord who chant the names of Krishna, Hare Krishna Mahamantra very sincerely, they will also be protected by the Lord. So these are the few points which Srila Prabhupada mentions in this lecture. So we'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Varaha Dev ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.